surprised and disappointed. That's how Corrine Brown's attorney says his client is feeling after a judge ruled there will be no new trial for the former Congresswoman, at least not now. The usually vocal 70-year-old so far has not said a word to reporters about this decision.
She's very strong and resolute. After we discussed what happened, her next statement or question to me was, what's next? What do we do?
Brown's sentencing date is set for November, now that her first appeal of her fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy conviction has failed.
She was found guilty in May, and her attorney was asking for either an acquittal or a new trial. She could be sentenced to up to 277 years in prison, but we're told she will likely get 5 to 7 years and could also be ordered to pay restitution. Joy and Lindsay are focusing on what's next for the disgraced career politician. But first, our coverage begins with Channel 4's Jim Piggott, who is live at the federal courthouse. Jim.
You know, I've been reaching out to Corrine Brown all day, and I did talk to her attorney today. As you'd mentioned, she said that she is disappointed by all of this and upset by this, and they are planning an appeal. Corrine Brown's attorney, James Smith, says he's been talking with her since the ruling came down today.
Frankly, surprised and disappointed. You know, I thought that we wrote 2 good motions. I was particularly proud of the motion that we put together for a new trial based upon the dismissal of the juror. And I thought that we had a good oral argument.
Right now, Smith says they'll be working on the sentencing phase, which will take place in November. The day before Brown is sentenced, her former chief of staff, Ronnie Simmons, and head of the bogus charity, Carla Wiley, will learn their sentence. They pleaded guilty and testified against Brown. In the ruling, Judge Corrigan says Brown got a fair trial with an impartial jury that reached a verdict in accordance with the law. Attorney Curtis Fallgatter, who's been following this case, told us 2 weeks ago it looked as if Brown could get a new trial. He based that on what happened when the juror was dismissed for his religious beliefs. Today, Fallgatter says he understands the judge's ruling.
He's sticking with the decision he made before, not too surprising, and it's a well-reasoned decision on his part. But, of course, it still leaves issues on appeal for Ms. Brown.
And Brown's attorney says this case is far from over.
I think that the case of Corrine Brown is going to be going on for, frankly, years. And the major issue that, you know, not only this court had to resolve, but the 11th Circuit and maybe even possibly the Supreme Court is going to have to resolve is whether or not she got a fair trial.
You know, I've asked both of these attorneys, do they think that Brown will be going to prison right after the sentencing? And both of them, they don't think that's going to happen. They say it's typical in white-collar crimes that these people are allowed to stay out of jail during the appeal process. We're live at the federal courthouse. Jim Piggott, Channel 4, the local station.
Thank you, Jim. Joy and Lindsay were with Jim the day the verdict was announced. They're focusing on what's next in this case. Joy, Lindsay?
Yes, Tom, even before the conviction came down, you remember really back to the day Corrine Brown was indicted, people have wanted to know if she is going to federal prison. And today, it really looks like that's one step closer to reality for her. Lindsay and I have been talking about that possibility for months with legal experts. We've got some photos from this whole ordeal to talk to you about. Now, Lindsay, you know, she was denied a new trial, but the next step is her sentencing in November. So, you know, what kind of time are we talking about?
Yeah, so she's out on bond right now, and this is really a situation she tried to avoid. This was the day that she was indicted, and she really was confident that if this, in fact, went to trial, she was going to be found not guilty. Of course, fast forward to today, her possibilities of getting out of this are really coming down to slim to none. So as Tom and Mary mentioned right off the top, we heard this huge number out the gate, like 350 years in prison. So people are trying to figure out why that could be more like 5 to 7. Well, this is the max amount of time for each and every charge she was convicted. So she was convicted of 18, that became 277, but she's likely going to serve 5 to 7. And there's a few things I want you to keep in mind as to that. Think mastermind. Again, she was the big fish in the scheme, and she was convicted. Think public corruption. The government does not take lightly that she was an elected official who was stealing money through this charity, so that's going to affect her sentencing, as well as that she has not taken any accountability. She still says she's innocent, so that's not going to take any time off her sentence. She's looking at 5 to 7 years and restitution. A lot of folks saying, where's the money going to come from?
Now, we heard a lot in Jim's story just before this, talking about an appeal. Is that going to affect this sentencing?
Well, she's hoping so. So she's hoping that by going through this appeal process, it's going to delay her actually going to federal prison. So here's how we believe this is going to go down. She's going to go in mid-November, possibly receive this prison sentence, but the appeal will be filed to hopefully delay her actually going into the prison system until the appeals are exhausted. So her attorneys are going to file every motion possible to try to stretch this out as long as possible. So 12, 18 months, 2 years, if it's going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. That's her hope, but it's not a guarantee.
Now, everybody remembers some of the key witnesses during this trial, other people who've already pleaded guilty in the case. We're talking about the former charity director, the One Door for Education director, as well as Brown's chief of staff. Are they going to go to prison since they struck plea deals?
Yeah, likely so, but you're going to be looking for them to get much less time. So Carla Wiley, the director of the bogus charity, has a clean criminal history. So she took the first deal. She was the first one to rat. She really participated with the government. So we expect less than 2 years for her participation. Ronnie Simmons faced up to 30 years. He pled guilty to 2 counts. Curtis Fallgatter tells us he'll likely be sentenced to 2 to 4 years because he is taking responsibility and he also cooperated.
All right. And then there was that big benefit concert. We saw commercials on TV, a concert for her legal defense fund. That concert was canceled. It was postponed till another date. What's up with that?
I have no idea. I've been trying to figure out for everyone today as well. I'm checking her Facebook pages. I'm checking her blogs. I've reached out to her attorney. And the answer I have for you is absolutely no answer. She is radio silent here tonight. So we do not know if she plans to continue that, but her legal battle just got a lot more expensive.
And we are going to stay on top of this every step of the way. Tom, Mary?
Thank you both. If you go to news4jax.com, you can read court documents we obtained today about the sentencing for Brown, Wiley, and Simmons. Just look on the homepage.